For many people, the devastating moment where you realize that you have lost everything that you had once held dear can be a heavy burden and leave a deep scar on even the most strong-willed of characters.
Take care to listen. You'll require an education on the ways of the learned tarnished.
The feelings that can accompany this loss eventually begin to consume and slowly change an individual.
I doubt he much resembles his former self anymore.
Nothing more than a body without the mind and soul of the person that you once knew, consumed by all that is wrong, until they eventually become an empty vessel in the passing of time. The lands between is rife with these beings who have experienced such loss and despair, but there is one woman who stands above the rest, having been completely stripped and deprived of everything that she had gained during her lifetime.
Rennala, Queen of the Full Moon. Rennala governs the Academy as Queen of the Carian Royals, but Rennala herself is no demigod.
Rennala was a great and powerful sorcerer who wielded not only glintstone sorceries, but also powerful lunar magic, the likes of which had never been seen, not even by the Academy, a place that was dedicated to the art and study of magic and was the pinnacle for all sorceries within the lands between. She was a prominent champion who charmed the Academy with her lunar magic, quickly ascending the ranks and eventually becoming its master. This was not the only feat that Rennala was known for, as she was also the leader of the Glintstone Knights, an elite and loyal force of knights, each sworn to protect and serve the most prestigious members of the Carian family. Her skill as a sorcerer was so extraordinary that she was able to establish the House of Caria as royalty, and some even believed her to be the most powerful mage to grace the lands, a mage to rival even the founders of the Academy, Lusat and Azure. But just how did Rennala come to find herself in such an important position of prosperity and power? Long ago, when Rennala was a young girl, it was believed that she was an astrologer. These were people and scholars who read the fate of the stars and were also said to be the true heirs to the school of glintstone sorcery. During the nights, Rennala would often gaze at the night sky as she walked across the lands, deep within the consecrated snowfields. She had always chased the stars at every step of her journey. That was until one day, during her walk, she encountered a magnificent and enchanting moon. Whilst her interaction with the moon and what followed is not made clear, we can speculate that it was in this moment that she unlocked her lunar magic. Perhaps it was a gift from the stars, or maybe she always had the innate ability to cast lunar magic, but Rennala herself simply did not know it until now. As time progressed, she continued to grow and develop her skills as a young sorcerer, until one day she left her home and fellow astrologers behind, and made her way south to the lakes of Liurna, where she proceeded to settle down and establish the House of Caria, after which she went on to become the head of the Academy. And yet, for Rennala, her life would once again take a drastic turn given the events that followed. Somewhere across Rennala's history, Queen Marika established her new age of the Erdtree, which eventually led to not one but two conflicts within the lakes of Liurna. These very conflicts would later be known as the Liurnian Wars. Those to partake in this war were the Carians, who united with the Academy under Rennala and fought against the Golden Order of Queen Marika. Marika went on to dispatch a champion known as Radagon to lead her armies in the battles to come. The two sides fought each other to a stalemate, seeing no clear victor as a result. During one of the many battles between the two sides, there was one such battle where the champion Radagon first laid his eyes on Lady Rennala, and not long after, he soon repented his territorial aggressions by cleansing himself with celestial dew and proceeded to swear his love to Rennala. After this, the Great War would reach a peaceful conclusion, a conclusion that would see the House of the Moon and the Erdtree united through marriage. Both Radagon and Rennala went on to have a good marriage, with Rennala teaching Radagon about the sorceries of the Academy, where over time they continued to grow closer together until they eventually had 3 children of their own. These 3 children were given the names Rani, Rykard, and Radan. At this point for Rennala, she had everything that she could ever ask for. She had great power as a mage and was highly respected by her fellow sorcerers at the Academy. She was the head of the Carian royals, and now with Radagon, she even had a family to call her own. And with the wars being long behind her, she could focus solely on what was most important to her. However, her rich and prosperous life would not stay this way for long. One day, Queen Marika of the Golden Order relinquished her husband Godfrey, the first Elden Lord, of his grace and titles, commanding him and his followers to leave the lands between and wage war in a far-off land. Upon Godfrey's exile, the title of Elden Lord and husband Queen Marika became vacant, at which point Radagon, the husband of Rennala, was called upon to be the next Elden Lord, causing Radagon to leave Rennala's side, the reasons for which are still unclear even to this day. The only thing that Radagon would leave behind for Rennala was an amber egg containing the great rune of the Unborn. Along with this, Marika also made Radagon and Rennala's children her own demigod stepchildren as a result of her marriage to Radagon, where Marika proceeded to raise them as her own, instead of their own birth mother, Rennala. After Radagon left, Rennala was left devastated and heartbroken. A heartbreak so strong, it caused her to lose everything that she had acquired over the course of her life. Upon seeing the man that she loved, the very man who she gave her heart and life to, and was also the father to her children, simply left her for another woman without even being given a clear reason as to why. To have someone so close leave her almost overnight, this left Rennala in such a tragic state that she began to spiral down a treacherous path, a path from which she is still yet to return. As for the Academy, upon seeing their leader in a weakened state, they quickly deemed that she was no leader at all, and instead chose to rebel against the Carian royal family, and Rennala soon found herself under attack from her own students. The very same people who once looked up to and adored her proceeded to imprison and lock her away within the Grand Library.
Do you see this? The Queen of Caria is no more. The Academy can hone the primeval current, so that we, fallen children of the stars, shall beam with brilliance once again.
In here, she would continue to lose her mind, and other events that would come to pass in the lands between would only push her further down this path of heartbreak and despair. Even her own demigod children, who she cared so deeply for, would each succumb to their own twisted fate. The great General Radagon went on to be consumed by scarlet rot after his battle with Melania, leaving him as nothing more than a savage and bloodthirsty beast. Rykard, the Lord of Blasphemy, would find himself as an enemy of the Erdtree and the Greater Will, turning his back on them and launching a blasphemous campaign that would see him offering himself to the great serpent that dwelled deep within Mount Gelmir, merging with the creature into a hideous monster. And for Rani, daughter of the full moon, she too would go on to forsake the Erdtree and the Greater Will, stealing a fragment of the Rune of Death and casting her own flesh aside, cementing herself as the first link within the chain reaction that would later cause the shattering. Rennala had lost her husband and her children. The status and power that she had once held was gone, and upon seeing her own students betray her, she slowly began to lose sight of who she once was, succumbing to grief and perhaps even loneliness, whilst locked away in the Grand Library of the Lucaria Academy. Many years would pass her by, and whilst here, she began to devote herself to the grim act of reincarnation, clutching to the amber egg that was bestowed upon her when Radagon had left. She would use the amber egg on the juvenile scholars that could be found around her, rebirthing them in an imperfect process which would leave their memories fading into oblivion. They were each and all frail, short-lived and imperfect beings. Rennala was left all on her own, where she too began to change. Whilst her physical form would stay as it is, her mind would break, slowly morphing her into a hollow shell of her former self. Perhaps she longed for what she had once had, all those years ago. Driven mad by heartbreak, she became a lonely and sad woman, a former wife and mother that simply wished to have her family back by her side. For Rennala, to go from being one of, if not the greatest sorcerer that the lands between had ever seen, to nothing more than a lonely woman devoted to a grim art form, some theories would state that her fall from grace was so bad that it was actually a plot by Marika herself, and that Marika had either sent or even disguised herself as Radagon in an attempt to drive the Queen of the Full Moon into a weakened state. As for the end of Rennala's tale, like most things within the lands between, her story intertwines with that of the player Tarnished. The Tarnished can fight their way through the Academy, where they can find Rennala at its peak, and a fight between the two unfolds. However, during the battle, they are interrupted by the voice of Rani, and an image of Rennala as she was, long ago and in her prime, appears before them.
Send word far and wide. Of the last queen of Caria.
The Tarnished does battle with the illusion of Rennala in a moonlit sea, eventually defeating her and even claiming her great rune. After the battle, Rennala is left alive, sitting in the middle of the library, still clutching the egg, inflicted with the pain of heartbreak and a lonely and sad woman. For Rennala, she is the only prominent figure throughout the entire game that does battle with the Tarnished and is left alive at the end of it. Perhaps we did not feel the need to take her life, or maybe, like most of the Carian royal family, her fate had already been decided by the stars. Was she simply a victim of circumstance used by Radagon in a ploy to weaken her? Whilst the answer might remain unclear for now, this may not be the end to Lady Rennala's story, but alas, only time will tell. And for many that still roam the lands between, despite losing sight of it herself, she is and always will be Lady Rennala, Queen of the Full Moon.